Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, the 27th of August. It is time for Lessons in Leadership. My name's Mary Gregory. It is 12 noon, and this is our 40th episode. Can you believe it? And I'm really delighted to welcome today someone who I'm really looking forward to getting under the skin of this conversation a bit more today, because it's, all about being disruptive and work extraordinary. Very warm welcome to Barry McNeill.
Great. Thank you, Mary. And really lovely to join you and to join your audience, join your listeners today to talk about a little bit of disruption on a Friday afternoon.
Yes, that is great. And just to remind those that are watching, we are on Facebook Live through StreamYard. If you are going to make a comment, please make sure to put your name in there as well. Otherwise, we can't see your name. But otherwise, do make comments, ask questions and contribute as we go through. So, Barry, Work Extraordinary, which I think is a fantastic name, because I think, having worked, both of us, we met in a consultancy situation. We were both delivering to clients in different ways in those days. And of course, what I've learned is that organizations always want to be extraordinary, and they want extraordinary results from their people all the time. That's a great name. But when you say extraordinary, what exactly do you mean?
So great question. And I think that the thing for me is about really creating organizations where people can thrive, can engage, can really bring their whole selves and all of their creativity, their thinking and their ideas into the organization. What we tend to see now, I mean, there's so much data out there about the level of disengagement, the number of people who find work and their jobs just a kind of a joyless, miserable experience. It's very transactional. It's about I'm going to give my time and effort in exchange for meeting the material needs of my of what I need to do. But actually, where is the tapping into the passion and the engagement and people bringing all of that energy to life? And so therefore the work we do is about helping leaders to design and to create organizations where people can bring all of that passion and energy and really focus on doing their best possible work.
Yes. So I really get a sense it's about bringing your whole self to work, and for leaders to be enabling others to bring their whole selves to work as well.
Absolutely. Which is very much about being able to be authentic and be vulnerable. And so this talks very much to your writing, lead without ego. So really kind of letting go of all of that kind of ego and status and all of the kind of symbols of leadership, and actually being really true and authentic and role modeling that for people in their organizations.
Fantastic. So I'm curious then, tell us a bit more about how you got to be setting up and founder of Work Extraordinary and an advocate for disruptive change. Tell us a bit more about your own journey.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, I won't do an entire life story, but I'll certainly start with, when I was a kid, what was important to me was about making people happy. And that was, part of my kind of dream for what I wanted to do when I grew up. And the way I first started doing that, so I originally went into theatre and was a performer. And for me, that kind of making people happy was good, but actually it was kind of a short-lived kind of moment when people came together in a theatre, and I was really kind of looking for how do I broaden that out, how do I have greater impact, which actually brought a bit of a kind of existential change for me, because I totally changed career, changed direction, which was how I got into talent and leadership development in the first place. And what I've done throughout my career, so I've kind of essentially worked through a number of different consulting organizations and working with some really huge global clients, but also a lot of kind of smaller, more agile, adaptive clients, but we're really kind of working with a real broad range of organizations. And I had I kind of call it my road to Damascus moment about 4 years ago.
I was going to ask you about that later, but it's coming now. That's great.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll bring it in, but we can certainly kind of delve into it in a bit deeper. But I had a road to Damascus moment about 4 years ago, where I found myself, I was working in a big global consultancy at the time, and I found myself leading this big global program of change, which on paper looked really quite exciting, and it was about kind of developing our consulting offer and professionalizing standards and kind of really kind of helping the whole organization to be rolling out a specific way of delivering our consulting offer. So, it was talking about best practice and professionalization and standards. And what I found myself doing was I found myself kind of working with all of these different countries that were doing lots of great pieces of innovation with their clients and their local market. And I was kind of going, well, yeah, that's all very nice, but actually put that to one side, because this is what we want to do. This is what the centre has decided that we really kind of need to be thinking about. And I kind of found myself going, this whole thing around professionalization and quality and standards was actually just a great big centralization program, which was getting rid of creativity and innovation. And I kind of found myself saying, this type of organization and this type of way of trying to lead and to drive an organization to achieve better commercial outcomes actually was kind of killing a lot of creativity. And that's really part of what brought me to a realization that we needed to think about organizations in a very, very different way.
Yes.
And think about designing organizations in a very, very different way in order to enable creativity and not to kind of dampen it down or stamp it.
Yes, it's really interesting what you're saying there, is that sort of what I hear is a driving for standardization and for standards and quality at the cost of encouraging innovation and alternative thinking is what I'm hearing. And yet I often speak to organizations, and what they really struggle with is, how do we get people in our organization to be more creative and to be more innovative?
Yeah.
So
it's a fascinating challenge, really, because I think what a lot of I was talking to someone actually just yesterday, and talking about this idea of, do you want an organization of people who are doing, or do you want an organization of people who are thinking? And actually, if you ask that question to any leader, they can say, well, we want an organization of people who are thinking. But the vast majority of organizations, in terms of their culture and their structure and the way that they are defined, and the way that leadership and the infrastructure and all of the systems and ecosystem of the organization is set up, is actually set up in what I would still say is largely a command and control kind of industrial age type of organization.
Yeah, I totally can get that. It's almost like that's the default that people go back to. So I know what I stand for is creating leaders who create other leaders. And that means empowering others rather than creating hordes of followers, of people who just go, oh, yes, you say how high and I'll jump how high, over how you want. That's not what we want. We want people who can think for themselves. And yet there's this default that we return to. And I'm including myself, because I think often we go and we're blind to it sometimes, we get in the organization and we miss what actually, you say you want people to be independent, but actually what you're doing and how you're being is encouraging dependency. So how do you think we tackle that, or how, from the work extraordinary point of view, how do you go about tackling that? It's a blind spot, isn't it? It's a massive blind spot.
Yes, it is, absolutely. And I think what a lot of leaders and what a lot of organizations are doing are essentially, they reinforce a lot of that type of thinking, generally from the way, from the way that the organization is designed and how information and data flows around the organization.
Yes.
So there's a number of different ways to begin to unlock that. And actually, what we do at Work Extraordinary, we don't bring in a prescriptive model or a blueprint of how to unlock it, because actually every organization is different. every context is different, and therefore what we've got to start to do is to start to play around with the dynamics of why the organization is set up in the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, some of it comes down to leadership style, and actually the way that a lot of our leaders develop, particularly in kind of corporate environments, is that people, from the early part of their career, the next career step is to become a manager. So therefore, they go through and actually often don't necessarily go through management development, but actually they suddenly kind of find themselves in a management role. And the role models and what they see around them of what it takes to be a manager, it is about control, it's about allocation of resources, it's about they kind of signing off and approving things, and actually all of the infrastructure and systems that happen within organizations, again, look for management controls and approvals and sign-offs and so on. So it becomes that kind of the early lesson in that kind of in your career development as a kind of professional manager and going on to become a professional leader is around control.
Yes.
And we talk about, as people progress through the tiers of the organization, about having increased spans of control. So even the language we use to refer to it reinforces this idea about control. So one aspect of it is very much about control and the role of as people progress into kind of chief exec or very senior leadership roles, it's about that kind of continuing to have that control and maintain that control.
Yeah.
I often find myself talking with leaders about the kind of their need for control or oversight about what's going on. Well, actually, that therefore suggests that that trust balance is not right. Or there's not that trust in their people.
Yes.
For people to be able to do the right thing.
Yes.
That then comes round to, well, where does information sit within the organization? And what other organizations do is they maintain tight control over information and data that's needed to make decisions within kind of tight controls at the top of the organization.
Yes.
And therefore you all of those work together to essentially reinforce that quite command control environment.
Yeah, and it's incredibly, what I'm just reflecting on as you're talking, is incredibly ego driven. All of this is very ego driven, because whenever there is a presence of fear, because it's fear focused, isn't it? I can't trust so and so to go and do that, so I'm going to put these controls in to make sure they do go and do it, and I can measure and whatever. Whenever there's fear present, that is a lack of trust. It's the opposite, I think. And fear is what activates our ego, of course. So fascinating. So say a bit more about disruptive change, because I was teasing you before we came on live about it. So are you joining Extinction Rebellion today down in London? Because you're an advocate of disruptive change. So tell us a bit more about that and what you believe around that.
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily kind of coming out today to talk about joining certain groups or not, but what I do believe is about the importance of of kind of activism within organizations.
Yes.
And I kind of use that term, I suppose, quite carefully, because I think for certain people that definitely brings up certain connotations. But if you think about what we try to achieve within certainly within more conventional types of organizations, is this idea of that there's a kind of strategy and kind of central messaging that happens within organizations. This idea that the kind of leadership team and managers have then got to be on message and on point. And that therefore when we're trying to think about change or transforming organizations, we try to really focus in on bringing everyone with us, so that everyone is comfortable and feels happy and secure within that organization. And so there's a positive intent behind a lot of that. But when you start to think about the potential negative impact of some of that, is we look to create cultures where where everyone thinks in a very similar way, or there was a lot of work and over a number of years that was kind of really focused on culture fit and making sure that so for instance, if we're recruiting in people into the organization, we're bringing in people who are going to fit the culture. You hear about it so many times. So people, that person is a really great, advocate for XYZ company. So they'd be a really great fit for the team.
Yes.
And actually, what we get to a point is we get to a point where people are essentially kind of brought in because they conform, or they work in a particular way, or they adapt in a particular way, and then there's that kind of underlying kind of command and control culture and environment where therefore people are learning to adapt and conform. And particularly if there's aspects of fear or lack of psychological safety, then actually people don't speak up, people don't talk about or voice the unpopular thing. So in terms of disruptive change, I'm a huge advocate for enabling that kind of activism and enabling I suppose some of the kind of maverick opinion and some of the different voices to come through within the organization. Because if we start to listen to that and start to, I use the language there around allow, it's about that kind of permission type of situation, which actually if we're thinking like that, then actually we're not really embracing diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. And I think that there's a growing awareness of the importance of diversity of thought for helping to shape and inform and progress the things that our organizations are doing.
It is a tricky one, isn't it? Because I've worked in organisations where I haven't felt the cultural fit has been strong, and it's been really uncomfortable and painful being part of that organisation. So how, my question is, how do you find that balance between, you want people who will be creative, who will speak up, who do feel safe enough, but you also want to have a commonality and connection with people as well. So what would you be doing as part of Work Extraordinary? How would you encourage more diversity and more disruption?
Yeah, so I think you've touched on just a couple of really interesting points there, Mary. One being, so when you've worked in organizations where you haven't felt that strong cultural fit, that's potentially been because the organization has been in such a kind of well-defined cultural identity.
Very much so, yeah.
And that actually everyone else within that organization is probably a little bit more of a similar ilk, and therefore you were experiencing that real challenge because actually it wasn't something that could embrace the diversity, and therefore you could feel comfortable expressing within that. Now,
yes, it wasn't okay to be different in that organization.
So that's a hypothesis.
No, I can relate to that. That resonates.
Okay. But I think the other thing about it is around finding connection is so a lot of the work we do is about helping to find what is the connection on purpose. So how do we connect on what the organization's higher purpose is? What does that look like? And therefore creating an environment and a culture and a climate where people feel safe being passionate and engaged about the purpose, so that we're not creating an environment where there's a kind of false harmony, or people are unafraid to really kind of talk up about things. So it's the connection aspect is on purpose, is on the social purpose of the organization, and to a degree the values. But actually that still enables people to have very diverse opinion. And be free to express that diverse opinion if the other aspects of the culture and the climate enable that to happen.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm keeping an eye on the time here, and I'm
Mm.
conscious we haven't come to talk about you in so much depth today. So I'm curious about you as well,
Sure.
and about your own journey as a leader. And you mentioned your Damascus moment
Yeah.
earlier on. So I'd just like to hear a bit more about, a turning point moment for you that has
Mm.
shaped who you are as a leader, and that kind of you can say it shows up in what you do and how you are as a
Mm.
leader
Okay.
today.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think the road to Damascus moment I referred to earlier was a turning point in terms of thinking about addressing the question about what impact do I want to have on the world?
Yes.
Because it really helped me to start to think about what are we doing? A lot of the work that I was doing up until that point was about helping managers and leaders and HR to a degree to adapt to how to be successful in a command and control environment. So that and actually I think a lot of what we do within organizations is kind of papering over the cracks of that. If you look
Right.
if you look at a lot of what a lot of what talent management processes are around are high potential programs is about kind of identifying those who are special and then excluding the others. There's a lot of aspects of what we do within our current organizational practice which reinforces and kind of maintains the equilibrium or the stability of the
Yes.
command and
Yes.
control environment. So the road to Damascus moment for me was it was my next existential crisis about, gosh, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want
Right.
to do when I grow up? And so for me, it prompted a huge, huge learning journey,
Okay.
which has been, really, really, really kind of growing and expanding in
Yes.
so many different ways. So that's I suppose about the what. The other moment for me that was I kind of refer to probably a little bit more as sort of like a crucible leadership moment was I had a few things that happened in my kind of organizational experience. So one of them, so I had a redundancy. Then I had a number of other things that happened within my other kind of organizational roles, which just
Yes.
really, for me, triggered some very very personal experiences.
And
And
what?
actually, what it
And
did.
what? So I
Sorry.
was going to say, what was the impact of those personal experiences being triggered?
So it brought out a lot of emotions and memories and things from my kind of early childhood. So I was
Yes.
bullied as a child um, over a very long period of time, actually a very sustained period of time. Uh,
Yes.
and actually, there was certain parts of that where I struggled to have I struggled to have my own voice and speak up about
Yes.
it, largely
Yes.
because there's a huge part of shame that comes with being bullied. And
Okay.
so and I was fortunate enough at the time I kind of went through uh, a lot of work with my coach to really kind of start to understand, well, what were the things that were triggering for me and why were they? And actually, that journey was really important. I suppose impetus for me to take the step to then set up Work Extraordinary, because
Wow.
prior to that, I'd kind of gone, well, I'd like to set up my own business and grow my own consultancy, and for such a long time, I'd kind of had so many doubts about why would anyone listen to me? Why would anyone want to buy into what I'm talking about as opposed to what others are talking about? And it was really through working through that with my coach around how to find the strength to forgive myself and to so I ended up doing quite a lot of work which was sort of transaction analysis related, but actually on myself, on my child,
Yes.
and enabling my free child to kind of come to the fore.
Yes.
Through that, I've then been able to kind of find my voice that was previously, I suppose, suppressed and
Yes.
focused far more on conforming than
Yes.
actually being happy and comfortable, standing up and saying, I don't think this is right, or
Yes.
actually we need to change the way that we're doing things. We need to change the way that organizations are organized and designed and run, and we need to change them, because actually we need to kind of be connecting with creating a better world and a better place for everyone, because the
Yes.
extent of social inequality and the vast inequalities that sit within organizations is just wrong.
Yes, yes. Gosh, that is really powerful. There's so much in what you've shared there that's coming through. And what I'm really hearing is the value of protecting and looking after your inner child, which is something all of us need to be doing. And often, in the context of organizations, it's not okay to even own up to having an inner child, so to actually look after that and be an effective parent to our own internal child, I think is something that's really, really important. And you spoke at the beginning so much about creativity, and of course it's in our free child that where all our creativity lives. So organizations can benefit so much by ensuring that they enable people to look after themselves in that way and look after that part of themselves, because it is still a part of ourselves. We always have that child part of ourselves till the day we die, really. So really powerful stuff there. So can I just ask also, were you bullied in the organization you were in? Is that something you experienced that triggered your childhood memories?
Yeah, so and I certainly wouldn't say that it was an ongoing or a systemic thing,
Yeah.
per se, but actually there are moments of our organizational experience, particularly when there are leaders who do lead with ego, and where control is an important aspect of the way that things operate. That for me, that's not everyone's experience, but certainly from my point of view, that does then kind of trigger certain memories and moments, and
Yes.
before I was able to work through what was going on and why it was triggering. It was one of those, I suppose, aspects of my life that I didn't necessarily understand. It was a
Yes.
blind spot to me.
Yes.
As you can appreciate, I've done so much personal development over my career, but actually it's an ongoing thing. You
Yes.
never get there. You never really arrive, as it were, because there's
Yeah.
always things to work on. And so
Yes.
for me, it kind of almost blindsided me a little bit. I just hadn't kind of really seen it coming.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it took a lot of kind of quite dedicated work with my coach to really understand why that was, and how I could start to choose to respond in a different way, and
Yes.
to
Yes.
act in a different way.
Yes.
That actually has been hugely empowering in so many aspects.
Yeah. Fantastic demonstration of how going through the stormy times, as it were, taking on the challenging parts of ourselves that we might never have even entertained or even thought existed, can make such a difference. Look what you've created on the back of that, in that you've got a whole business and consultancy yourself. Work Extraordinary has now arrived on the back of the work that you've been doing, which is fantastic. So I this always happens to me, that we get caught out with the time. We're almost out of time, Barry. So thank you for sharing all that you've shared. That's been fantastic. Are there any parting words you'd like to leave people with as we continue to navigate through these pandemic days, as it were? I know we're out of lockdown and everything, but we still don't really know what's around the corner. So any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are at a really fascinating time in where organizations are at and where leaders are at, about thinking through what is the kind of organization that we want to design moving forward, and what's the kind of future that we want to create.
Yes.
And so really, daring to question and challenge the assumptions, the things that we've always done because that's the way we've always done them, and really daring to push ourselves to imagine what a different world could look like and what a different future could look like. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to chat to anyone who wants to start to explore those particular questions.
Fantastic. So look out for Barry and look out for Work Extraordinary. I think those are wonderful things for us to be questioning ourselves around in these uncertain times, particularly. And I'm going to say a big thank you to you for your time today. And a big thank you to those of you that have been watching. Do leave comments in the comments box. We always reply to them. Or if you're watching and catch up, again, leave us a nice comment down there or questions that you may have. We will always come back to you. That brings us to the end of episode 40. Next week, we are going across the pond. We are going international next week to the US of A, where I have Brian Formato as my guest. And Brian is a leader who has created groove management, which in itself sounds really fascinating from my point of view, and also leadership surf. So he focuses on how can we use the natural environment, the experience of surfing to enhance our leadership. So I'm very much looking forward to talking to Brian then. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.